And Happy New Year. It is 7 o'clock and we have a quorum, so I will go ahead and call us to order and ask Caroline to help us with roll. Are we still doing that? Okay, cool. So go ahead, turn your mics on, answer roll call and turn your mics off.
Aaron Gill,
Not present.
Frank Kinsella. Not present. Robert Zipple. Not present. Allison Falwell. Here. Lauren Lewis.
Present?
Raj Benat.
Here.
Justin Fields.
Present.
Dan Kinney.
Here.
Kathy Sutherland. Here. Steve Mink.
Here.
Lonnie Wong Bissett. Not present. Mara Burton. Not present. Edward Von Rennen.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Indeed, thank you so much. Next item of business is the opening report. For that, all I will say is it has been a pleasure serving as your chair for the past 2 years. I imagine I will return to do so again someday. But for the coming year, I just putting it out there, I won't be entertaining any motions to serve as chair again, because I really do think it's important that somebody else, that we break it up and we get another voice. For those of you that love my meetings, and there are thousands, thousands that love my meetings, I'll be back. I'll be back if you'll have me, but not this year. First order of actual business then is to elect chair folks and vice chair folks.
Sharon, point of order, do you want to call for public comments and then the minutes?
Yes, I skipped right over those things. So first, this portion of the meeting is for persons who would like to make a comment. You will be given 3 minutes. Do we have any submissions? Do we have any in the room? Awesome, thanks. Now I will be entertaining motions to approve minutes from our last meeting. There's one.
Second.
There's a second. Roll call vote, please. Same rule, turn all your mics on, vote, turn your mic off.
Aaron Gill,
I abstain.
Allison Falwell. Aye. Lauren Lewis,
Aye.
Raj Benat,
Aye.
Justin Fields,
Aye.
Dan Kinney,
Aye.
Kathy Sutherland. Name. Steve Mink,
Abstain.
Edward Von Rennen.
Aye. That passes. Thanks so much. Now we elect new chairs and vice chairs. As a point of order, Caroline, it would seem that I would do vice chair first so that I would keep the mic for the chair election, or would I do the chair election first and then the new chair would do the vice chair?
Typically we do the chair first and then the vice chair, but it's at your discretion.
Okay, we'll get right to it. I will open the floor to motions for a new chair. I will nominate Justin Fields.
Second.
Okay, so Justin, do you accept? I should not.
Yeah, nobody else.
He's gonna be perfect. Any other motions for chair? Remember, it is not frowned upon to nominate yourself. Lonnie, we are opening the floor for nominations for our 2024 chair. We have one for Justin. Any more? All right, I think that does it. Justin, would you like to speak to the crowd before we vote? All right. Caroline, would you be so kind as to preside over a roll call vote?
Aaron Gill,
Aye.
Robert Zipple,
Aye.
Allison Falwell, Lauren Lewis,
Aye.
Raj Benat,
Aye.
Justin Fields,
I guess.
Dan Kinney, Kathy Sutherland. Aye. Steve Mink,
Enthusiastic.
Lonnie Wong Bissett. Aye. Edward Von Runnen.
Aye.
Awesome. Congratulations, Justin. You get this. And no, not only that, you now have to elect your vice chair.
Okay. We'll open up the floor for nominations for vice chair. I'll nominate myself. Wait, I withdraw.
I'll second.
I nominate Steve May.
Oh.
I second the nomination of Steve Mean.
Are there any other nominations? All right, proceed to a vote then.
Aaron Gill,
Aye.
Robert Zipple,
Aye.
Allison Falwell. Aye. Lauren Lewis.
Aye.
Raj Vinat,
Aye.
Justin Fields,
Aye.
Dan Kenny,
Aye.
Kathy Sutherland. Aye. Steve May,
Aye.
Lonnie Wong Bassett. Aye. Edward Von Runnen.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, our second item of business, education program accomplishments and 2024 look ahead. Michelle Garcia.
Use this to. Good evening, Michelle Garcia, Educational Program Coordinator. It's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight to talk about the successes of our 2023 educational programs and also a quick look ahead of what we got planned in 2024. I'd like to start tonight with telling you about my favorite program that we did in 2023. We had the pleasure of working with the International Rescue Committee with their Girls Empowerment Summer Camp to bring about 17 young women out to Little Uvis Open Space Preserve. All of these young women are refugees coming from 8 different countries, speaking 5 different languages. And the goal of their Girls Empowerment Summer Camp is what it sounds like, to have these young women who have endured the unimaginable be empowered, safe, and welcomed. That is the goal of every educational program we provide. And we wanted to bring that to this presentation here today. That's why we've brought roses for you all. We wanted to make you all feel welcomed to enjoy this presentation as well. We've also provided some plates with some things underneath your napkins. For those of you who indulged already, that's fine, but save them for a surprise till just a little bit later. In 2023, we had 108 programs, which had 3,252 educational contacts. That is well over 3,000 people who were welcomed into these open spaces. Well over 3,000 people who connected to nature, and well over 3,000 people who learned the importance of conservation in our open spaces. And we could not do that without the thanks and the help of our amazing volunteers. We have multiple volunteer programs, but at the educational program side, we work with our docents. We have well over 50, now nearly 60 educational docents who allow us to create and perform all of these amazing programs. It is thanks to these docents that we've continued to provide our regularly scheduled most popular programs, such as our stargazing programs, our bird walks, our wildflower walks, tarantula treks, and the Perseids meteor shower viewing, which was the largest event at the Open Space Authority this year with over 700 people in attendance. We were also, thanks to our docents, able to reach out to new partners and new communities in 2023. The International Rescue Committee was a brand new partner that we worked with this past year, along with Walk with the Doc, the Renaissance Academy, and many others. The way we were able to connect with the International Rescue Committee was actually through one of our docents. One of their staff just happened to participate in one of our guided hikes this past year in 2023. And they were so impressed with the guided program that they reached out to us and asked for their very own. This did come with challenges though, because with many different languages and unique background of some of these young ladies, we had to creatively work and create a program that allowed them to learn about our open spaces. It was with this creativity and adaptability that we were able to create a multisensory program that helped them learn, but also helped them to just enjoy being outdoors. We incorporated touch, taste, smell, and even a little bit of music into this program. And we've provided a little bit of the same thing for you today. If you lift up your napkins, we've got some snacks for you. Dried cherries, sun-dried tomatoes, apricots. This was some of the favorites things that we provided for the girls at this program, and we thought we'd provide the same for you today. We also were able to maintain our ongoing partnerships with some of our favorite partners like the San Jose Astronomical Association, the Gilroy Beekeepers Association, Peninsula Open Space Trust, and many more that I don't have time to name here, but they're all great partners. Now, carrying on with our creativity and adaptability in our programs, we also incorporated other ways to reach out to new communities, such as creating more tactile programs. For example, this program was led by our very own Kat Hill. Using individual tactile discovery, Scout students were able to dissect owl pellets and try to identify bones they found in there. We also created space for special needs. Not everyone enjoys a large program with a lot of people. One example was when we partnered with the San Jose Astronomical Association to create a smaller group better suited for special needs so we could stargaze at night, no matter what sensory difficulties might come by. Other new programs we had were silent sunrises at Sierra Vista, campfires at the Open Space Authority, solar gazing, and a celebration of public transit hike. Last but not least, we also helped with many multi-departmental events this past year in 2023. There's a lot to celebrate with the opening of Mayana-Yakima Coyote Ridge and with our 30th year anniversary. Not only were we able to participate in these amazing events, but we are also able to provide educational programs at these events. With the help of our docents, we were able to lead guided hikes for the Earth Day celebration, the Mayana-Yakima Community Day celebration, and the Bay Area Ridge Trail dedication. And looking ahead in 2024, of course, we've got lots of more fun stuff planned. We are currently training our newest round of docents in preparation for using education as a management tool at Mayana-Yakima Coyote Ridge. We will need lots of educational programming out there, and thankfully we have an amazing core of docents ready to help the public learn about the valuable asset in conservation that is Coyote Ridge. And of course, all kinds of more fun stuff coming up. That's just some of the highlights that are coming soon in 2024. That's all. Thank you all so much. It's a pleasure being with you here tonight. Oh, anytime.
2023 volunteer program, year in review. 2024 opportunities, Kat Hill.
Sorry, y'all, I don't have any treats for you. Kat Hill, Catherine Hill, Volunteer Programs Coordinator. Welcome to the brand new year, as well as this presentation all about basically looking at the past year, our 30th anniversary, and what we've accomplished with our volunteer programs, as well as a look ahead to 2024. We are first, though, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what all of our volunteer programs do, because I don't think anyone in this room gets a full breadth of all the amazing things that we do here. So I'm going to start off with that, and then we'll dive into it. So our volunteer programs encompass everything from stewardship programs all the way through education and outreach. We have two programs that focus on outdoor stewardship. This involves our trail masters and our land stewards. We also host folks who lead educational programs and Michelle did a great job just covering all of that, but essentially they're the ones out there leading and connecting people to the outdoors. And then we have preserve stewards, trail patrol, and community outreach, and their primary roles are public interface. Our trail patrol volunteers are out there every single day interfacing with the public and learning about public feedback on our preserves. Our preserve stewards are supporting our large-scale educational events. They are also integral team members for our newly opened preserve and our strategy for collecting data at Mayani Yakima. We also have community outreach volunteers who are meeting the public where they are, literally in their neighborhoods, at fairs and festivals and other celebrations. And then we have you all, our Citizens Advisory Committee. And you all are very supportive of our mission by providing public input to policies, to new preserves, to our grant programs, and also by being a face during our educational programs and our outreach events. So do a lot here with just the support of volunteers. So I'm going to take the rest of this presentation to focus more on the accomplishments of our preserve stewards, our community outreach volunteers, and our land stewards, because those programs have done an immense amount during our 30th anniversary. First off, our preserve stewards. Preserve stewards supported our mission in multiple ways this last year, but none more so than in helping us engage the public during the opening at Mayani Yakima. Preserve stewards have been out with staff nearly every single weekend, helping to facilitate butterfly pass access, to serve as a resource for visitors, to patrol the preserve and gather important feedback about visitor impacts. And all of these efforts and data gathering have been very informative for our adaptive management plan for Mayani Yakima. They are also incredibly important for building that community care for this incredibly rare serpentine habitat. I will say that given the historic popularity of Mayani Yakima, that we are going to be ramping up efforts with our new Preserve Stewards program at Mayani Yakima. So our biggest focus for the volunteer program is going to be at this brand new preserve. And that actually brings me to the Land Stewards program real quick. So Land Stewards are kind of a touchstone program for a lot of people. They're often the first thing that people come to in order to, hey, I want to volunteer, I want to give back. And they meet us and they put their hands in the earth and they're like, this is a lot of fun. And that's usually what draws them in to becoming more like integral, more committed volunteers. And so our Land Stewards program is a very hard-hitting program, I'd say. This last year, Land Stewards committed nearly 1,000 hours donated to 22 different projects that ranged all the way from South Gilroy all the way to East San Jose. These projects included things like native plant restoration efforts, invasive removal efforts, beautification projects. A lot of these projects also centered around Coyote Valley, which also is a communication point for our Coyote Valley Master Plan efforts. And in 2024, we will be scaling back some of these efforts so that we can commit more to Mayani Yakima, but we plan to keep pushing our momentum with this program by offering at least one project per month. And that brings me to our outreach volunteer success. So in 2023, outreach volunteers committed, they were able to actually help us lead 16 different outreach events. These involved more historic events such as San Jose State's Earth Week event, as well as Earth Day in Morgan Hill, Santa Clara's Earth Day as well. It also included more new events such as National Night Out. This also involved Veggie Fest and Mexican New Year. So what I'm trying to say here is volunteers have done a lot in helping us expand our outreach this last year. Without the commitment of volunteers who are fluent in our work and our mission, we could not go to as many different places as, you know, I possibly could. And none is a better example of this actually than during National Night Out this last year. Multiple volunteers came forward and last August, along with a few members of our own Citizens Advisory Committee, to make it possible for us to be present in all 7 districts in one night. So this is the power that is, you know, our communal effort together. And that actually brings me to 2024. As I mentioned before, we cannot do our outreach, we cannot do our work without really fluent and well-versed volunteers who can really talk to the public. And so I'm going to pitch to you a really amazing training that we offer. It's called Interpretive Host Training. We give you talking points, we give you resources, we give you practice with key scenarios that you might encounter when you're a volunteer in any of these roles. And we do it in a really, really fun way. We've been able to train up to 150 volunteers and field staff in these interpretive training techniques. That's how popular they are. And so I'd love to have any and all of you come join us either February 24th or February 25th, same training both days, 4.5 hours, tons of fun. We bring snacks. Okay. So mark that on your calendars. The other thing that I definitely want to have your leadership in helping us with is spring outreach. We have multiple events lined up for spring. Some of them are still a little TBD, but definitely planning to commit to multiple events during Earth Week. So if you're interested, please do tag me. I would love to have your help. And a more specific ask actually involves Mexican New Year, which is on March 17th, 9 to 1. We're still looking for one volunteer to come help us with that event. And why we love it so much, it is a celebration of the Aztec New Year, and it commits us to the neighborhoods in and around Emma Prush Park, which, again, super important that we get out into these places and meet people where they are. So if you're interested in that, please do sign up on the volunteer portal or just tag me. I'm happy to help. Anyway, does anybody have any questions? Thank you for your time.
Good to see in the picture in the beginning of all the volunteer appreciation. There's a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new ones as well. So shows the devotion and dedication a lot of people have. Mark, Megan.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Would you like to ask if there's any public comments?
Any public comments? Being none, we'll proceed. Mark and Megan.
Good evening, members of the CAC. Mark Landgraf, External Affairs Manager.
Megan Drager, Grants Program Manager.
And we've got a presentation for you tonight about the legislative and funding priorities. We're going to tag team here a little bit. So Hopefully this is of interest, but please do go ahead and interrupt us and ask questions or make comments if you'd like as we're going along. There's a lot of detail in here, but there is also a lot of detail in your board reports that I'm going to be reviewing just a little bit here. So next slide, please.
Yeah.
Oh, I can do this myself. Yes. All right.
He's so excited.
It's not often that I get to do that kind of stuff. So this is about priority setting. This presentation was also given to our board on December 14th of last year so that the board could provide input on our legislative priorities for this year. We're focusing on just the state and the federal funding and policy priorities here. In the past, we've done these annual strategy setting meetings where we've also included local policy, but local policy tends to be very different and it's also not on the same timeline as the state and federal calendar year legislative sessions. So we are going to do that separately, both with the board and with the CAC. So stay tuned for that. But right now we're really focusing on state and federal. So you saw in your board report the program objectives that are really describing our top priorities for engaging in this kind of work, both at the state and federal level. Funding is, of course, extremely important to implement our mission. Megan's going to talk about that in just a moment. And then tracking and engaging with appropriate policy, whether that means expressing support for a bill or expressing opposition. We do track a lot of legislation at both levels, state and federal, through the help of our consultants. They're the ones that understand what our priorities are, what our objectives are, and they filter that information, provide that to us, and then we can weigh in. We also have different levels of engagement. Those are also described in your report. They tend to fall into these categories of either we're leading on legislation ourselves, and we'll talk about our Enabling Act amendments here shortly where we're leading. Otherwise, we tend to support or oppose and then monitor other legislation that's of a lower priority level. We've also got in your report a list of the most fruitful collaborations that we engage in. This changes all the time, so there may be new collaborations that come up during the course of the year, but those listed, like Together Bay Area, the Wildlife Corridor Working Group, and others, are extremely important to our work so that we can have a focused voice, especially in Sacramento, on some of the most important objectives for us. Again, back to that funding that's so critical to our work. I've also given a sampling about, I believe, 8 of the most important bills that we tracked last year, some that were successful, some that were not. So you can read through those too. I want to mention that sometimes the language we use might be a little bit foreign to people. So there's one, I think, that says a bill died in suspense. And so I don't know if you all are familiar with that terminology, but suspense is when a bill goes to an appropriations committee where the committee decides whether the funding that it would take to implement a certain bill is really worth the investment to the people of California. That's the Appropriations Committee's job. And if they are in the process of considering a bunch of bills that have funding requirements, they put them in a suspense file. And if the bill gets pulled off of suspense and gets considered and it moves on, then it moves forward. But a whole lot of bills die in suspense. And I know it sounds like a mystery movie or something, but that's what happens to many of these. Unfortunately, you know, there's only so much money to go around. That we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment too about the budget deficit at the state this year. But I just wanted to clarify that terminology. But please let us know if you have questions about any of the other terminology in there. And then, as I mentioned, please don't hesitate to ask questions as we go through our presentation. So the calendar is just a snapshot of where we are in the course of the year. Oh.
I don't understand what a 2-year bill is.
Through the chair. Thank you for the question. Great way to jump into explaining that one. So sometimes a bill is not making good progress when it's introduced in the legislature, whether it's in the assembly or starts in the Senate. And so if it takes a little bit longer to sort of build the support, maybe make amendments that make it more favorable to those that are in opposition, then it becomes a 2-year bill. They don't want to say they're going to start over again. They want to say they're going to continue it into the next year, and then hopefully it's successful in the second year. So I think AB 68 was one that's on your example list that is in that category. And it's one that we're following really closely because it would help reduce sprawl on natural and working land. So super critical. And there's still a lot to work out there. So we're going to dig in and do our best to support that in the coming year in its second year. Thanks for the question. Before I just jump right into the calendar then, any other questions? All right. So as you can see with the vertical yellow line, this is where we are in the year. We're in the second half of January. The governor's budget proposal anyway, was presented on January 10th. We'll talk about that in a moment, but otherwise you can kind of see where we are. There's, especially at the state level, it's fast and furious once the legislative session starts. And we're constantly learning about new bills that are introduced and how we're going to respond to them and where we engage. With that, I'll hand it over to Megan.
Good evening, everyone. So this is a little different than we've done it in the past, adding funding and the legislative outlook together, but in part that's because they're so closely linked. As Mark mentioned, when we're talking to various elected officials at all levels, funding is one of the main things that we're talking to them about, either in the immediate sense or something down the road. So very closely linked. Second bullet point, just to mention, funding takes quite a bit of time. And so this is primarily talking about competitive grant funding, but there's other kinds of funding we've worked on too through these different levels of government. But for example, for a competitive grant, which we've luckily been very successful in getting a lot of grants, it can easily take a year from the time we apply to when we actually start getting the funds. So we really are always having to look many months out to make sure we're aware of where we're going so that we can request the funds in time for the work to get done. And of course, we have lots of great work to do. So we're always looking for funding for everything we do. A lot of the grants we get are for acquisitions as well as capital projects like Mayana Yakima, that public access project was almost entirely grant funded from a grant from state parks. But we also have grants for things like policy work and research too. So just depending on the kind of work we're doing at any given time. A quick snapshot of the grants. So just to clarify, this is grants, mostly competitive grants, funding that we've gotten. This does not include things like partner funding where we've gone in together on a project. This is really specifically focused on grants. But since the beginning of the agency, so this is going all the way back, we've gotten about 69 million in grant awards. But in the 3 shades of green, you can see 90% of that is public funding at different levels of government. So again, that's why funding and legislative affairs are so closely linked. The bulk of the funding has come from the state. You can see more than $52 million over time, but certainly a good chunk from local and federal levels as well. And I'll just note the 69 million, as I said, is from the beginning of the agency, but almost entirely within the past 10 years. And much of it within the past 5. So a lot of the funding has to do with when our big projects are. That's when we need the funding. So it's very much related to what we've been working on. And we've had a lot of big acquisitions lately. Any questions about funding? Yeah.
I was surprised by the private. A little bit about that. Is that private foundations, or is it like Post saying, when we turn the property over to you, there's a certain value and we won't ask for the money?
That's a great question. There is certainly money depending on what you're calculating with partners like Post, but this is really looking at grants specifically. So foundations is more common example. So for example, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation funded a good chunk of when we originally bought Mayana Yakima. So that's an example of that. That was 1.4 million.
You actually also define local where those sources come from?
Yeah, so local is the one that's the most varied. So in a way, it's the hardest to answer. So local includes everybody from, for example, Valley Water to, let's see, MTC partners that are in the area that give out grant funds of various kinds. Those tend to be much more, of course, local and specific in the kind of funding they provide. And they tend to be folks that we work with a lot in lots of contexts. So Valley Water is a good example. We work with them in lots of ways, but they also have a grant program that we've been successful with. Any other questions? I'll start on the federal side and then hand it back to Mark. Partly because the very first thing there is what we're working on. We're continuing to work with our consultants in Washington, D.C. And one of our focuses is really the relationship building with federal elected officials as well as agencies. And funding, again, is a lot of what we end up talking about. Mark and I just 2-3 weeks ago took Representative Panetta on a tour of Coyote Valley, for example, again, to continue that relationship building. I mentioned funding already. See, Mark puts in these fancy, animations where I have to click next a million times. One of the funding examples, though, Representative Panetta that I just mentioned, he sponsored a community project funding request for $800,000 for an ADA trail at Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. That has unfortunately been held up with the larger budget negotiations in Congress, but it is still there. So we really appreciate his support and looking for that kind of funding again in the future. Competitive grant programs are also something that we're always keeping an eye out. At the federal level, there are many agencies, lots of different kinds of grants, depending on what our work is at any given time. But agencies like Fish and Wildlife Service, EPA, National Park Service, and so on. So we're always looking for what's available there that is in alignment with what we're doing. Turn back to Mark.
So in the past year, we've been working quite a bit with Congressman Panetta and with our other federal representatives, both in the House as well as in the Senate, on amendments to the 2023 Farm Bill that would allow us to be eligible for a program at the NRCS, the National Resource Conservation Service, where we would be able to apply for funds that help us acquire property that we would then resell to a private party, say a farmer, subject to a conservation easement. It's called a buy, protect, sell model. And currently, special districts are not eligible for that program. The money that was originally intended through this program was supposed to go directly to farmers, and that's absolutely what we want in the end. So we all have the same goal in mind. It's just the process to get there that we're working hard with others around the country to educate our elected leaders that sometimes you have to have an interim step that either involves a nonprofit or a government agency that can be that interim landholder and then resell it to a private party. So we are continuing to work on those amendments because of the issues with leadership in the House wanting to, gain momentum on some appropriations process. They just kicked the can down the road another month for a continuing resolution to hopefully pass appropriations bills in March. They also delayed any changes to the Farm Bill for, our understanding is, a year, continuing the current Farm Bill that's in place and then revisiting any amendments to the Farm Bill towards the latter half of next year. I'm sorry, of 2024, this year. So we're going to keep an eye on that and see where we can continue to support those amendments. We're working with a national coalition that includes the Conservation Fund and American Farmland Trust, two very influential organizations in Washington, D.C. So we hope we'll eventually be successful. We just got to stay on it. And then we also work to support tribal recognition for our tribal partners and do that on an ongoing basis. At this, yeah.
Yeah, if I could, Mark, and go back, could you expand on the special districts and how that's gonna work in terms of buy, protect, and sell? Can you expand a little bit on that? Is there anything to expand on that? An explanation of what the thoughts are on that? On both from the meta viewpoint and state viewpoint?
Mhm.
Because I think urban edge areas and counties are pretty interested in that type of application.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And through the chair, I almost looked at Lauren. Sorry, Justin. So let me just go back for a second. The buy, protect, sell model allows agencies like ours to buy a piece of property in fee title. That's the buy part. We would put a conservation easement on it at the same time that we resell it to a private party, say a farmer. So that allows it to be sold to that farmer at a lower cost because it's got less value than when it had all those development rights. We hold the conservation easement, so that protects the property from future development or subdivision that could risk losing those agricultural operations, right, on the property.
What are the restrictions, or what is the, obstacles to being a special district and being able to move in those directions? What do you think?
Right. So if we were to do that with our own funding, like just buy the property outright and then resell it and recoup some of that cost back, we can go ahead and do that. That's not an issue. It's if we want to apply for federal funding to get that process going and use their money and then give them back what we used, minus the value of the conservation easement. So it's only if we want to apply to that program for the funding because, we don't want to tie up our capital in that property during the time. Yeah.
I guess in the planning standpoint, as we're going through up to 25, and can you reflect upon builder's remedy and moving these projects through without having to go through any planning type of application of cities and areas?
Sure. And this is a completely different issue, but sure, happy to expand on that a little bit. So what Aaron is talking about of builder's remedy is part of the state's encouragement, let's say, for cities and counties to approve housing element amendments to their general plan that allocate a certain number of housing units within the next 8 years that accommodate the intended growth for the state. So that's called a RHNA process. RHNA stands for Regional Housing Needs Assessment. And it's a process that the state conducts and cities and counties have to respond and then come up with their allocations. So in our county, there are some cities in the county itself that were delayed in approving those compared to when the state wanted all those amendments done by. And that allowed this builder's remedy, which is a way for developers to bypass some of the local restrictions on building and allow the state to streamline those development plans. Now, it's interesting, and I don't know if you've been reading news about these builder's remedy plans, but in some cases, it has had the unintended consequence that the state even wanted by, modifying a development proposal that was in place that included many affordable housing units. But then with the builder's remedy, the developer gets to modify the plan to their own liking and then would reduce some of those affordable housing items and be able to move forward with their proposal. So it's really, it's crazy. But of course, the state's trying to do what they can to enable the building of housing and streamline that process. A lot of other legislation that was passed last year and is being considered for this year. And so they're trying to do what they can. Cities and counties are trying to do what they can, but just sometimes it takes a while. In the meantime, there's this window open through builder's remedy.
So any position go ahead and establish proper planning? I thought it was this is extended till 2025, if I'm correct. I'm not sure that the moratorium on local planning has been kind of.
So, right. So it's a good question, but I'm not certain of when that the window expires. Right. So I could get back to you on that. I can look up the answer and get back to you.
Sorry for that.
No.
Question.
Great question. Any other questions before I go on to the state priorities? All right. So as Megan mentioned, at the federal level, we also are very engaged in relationship building, especially with our local assembly members and senators, their staff, both at the district level here locally and in Sacramento. We invite folks on tours. Assemblymember Pellerin went on a tour not too long ago to understand a little bit more about Coyote Valley, which is in her district. We took Assemblymember Calra on a tour up to the top of Mount Hamilton so he could understand his new district area in the Diablo Range. So we're constantly checking in with our members, their staff, and also very important are the committee consultants in Sacramento that are in charge of, you know, the agricultural committee, the appropriations committees, all of those that see the bills at various stages in the process so that we can maintain a good rapport with those consultants. And when they do an analysis on the bill that's important to us, we can either provide input or learn more about the bill than what's published. So specifically, one bill that we are hoping to carry out this year is to make amendments on our Enabling Act. So these are, I believe I've mentioned here before when we brought this item to our board last year. These are amendments that would allow the Open Space Authority to increase the expenditure allowance for the general manager. They would allow us to work on fee acquisitions east of Coyote Ridge. Right now, we're only able to accept donations of land and purchase conservation easements, but we'd like to be able to purchase land and fee as well. And then it would allow us also to create community facilities districts that we could use as a tool to propose funding in certain geographical areas where we would provide a special service based on, say, a new preserve opening with trails in a certain community. So those are the amendments that the board has approved for us to move forward on, and we're currently seeking an author for those amendments. We've approached Senator Cortese and are approaching 3 assembly members and have yet to get confirmation. They're interested. We're having discussions, but they're also getting a lot of other inputs from other constituents. And so by the end of this month, we need to have a commitment from one author if we're going to be able to move forward and introduce a bill. So on the funding side here too, very closely linked, as Megan was talking about, to our policy work. So through our consultants, we very closely track what the budget is going to be like in the coming year. You may have read the news or heard the news about the governor's proposal that was announced on January 10th. So at the beginning of the year, he makes a proposal for what he thinks the budget ought to be, and then the legislature goes through their process through June to approve a budget by the end of June. And this year, the budget that the governor proposed was with a $38 billion deficit. That's billion with a B, but that's 30 billion less than the 68 billion that was originally estimated. So that 38 billion, about a third of that is proposed to come from a rainy day fund that the state's been setting aside, and then the rest of it from various cuts. There are some cuts being proposed to the climate budget, including to some of the funds that we tend to draw from at the Wildlife Conservation Board, the Coastal Conservancy, et cetera. And so they're not terribly drastic, but they could affect our work and Megan's ability to get funding in future years. But we are, working with our legislators to tell them how important those funds are to us as they start considering all of these proposals that the governor put forth. Because there's a budget deficit this year and there was one last year as well, there has been a lot of legislative interest in climate resource bonds. So these would be bond measures that appear on presumably the November ballot if the legislation gets passed. So these bond measures currently are proposed for $15 billion, one in the Senate and then another version in the Assembly. That doesn't mean they would add together to 30 billion. They'd have to work out the differences between those. But it's likely that they won't, even if they make their way through the legislature, they won't end up at $15 billion because there's so many other competing needs at the state for housing, for education, transportation, et cetera, that they'll probably get whittled down. But in the assembly version, we do have the Coyote Valley Conservation Program written in to the legislation at $30 million currently, and hopefully that will remain in there even if it gets cut back some, because that would be very important for us to be able to do some significant capital work in Coyote Valley. There are also two constitutional amendments on the November ballot that we're very interested in. ACA 1, which means Assembly Constitutional Amendment number 1, would reduce the voting threshold to 55% for local ballot measures that provide funding. And right now the threshold is 2/3, so it would reduce that threshold significantly. And if the Open Space Authority does consider a funding ballot measure in the fall, we hope to take advantage of that lower threshold. Even if it's on the same ballot, if ACA 1 passes, we would be able to, pass with 55%. So that's an important one. And then ACA 13 is another amendment that requires any funding measure legislation that changes the threshold to itself be passed by that threshold. And this is primarily put on the state legislature because there's a private citizens initiative that is intending to raise all funding measures, local and at the state level, and even for fees up to 2/3. And so it would itself require 2/3 to pass in November. So a lot of complication there. I don't mean to bore you with the details, but I wanted to give you enough that if you have questions, please feel free to ask, and also feel free to send questions my way afterwards too. And then just generally other funding priorities, we stay on top of any programs that are being affected where it may be that eligibility changes and special districts or the types of projects that we do might get cut out of a program, and we want to keep track of that and provide input to the state. And then on the policy side, as we've done over these past couple of years, we watch very closely what housing legislation comes forward to note if there are unintended consequences on conservation. So what we just talked about with builder's remedy is one. And so we try to influence legislation if we learn of any of those unintended consequences that we can fix over the course of the year. We're also supporting efforts to encourage infill development as opposed to working on developing on natural and working land. So to the earlier question, AB 68 is one that we're watching very closely. And then generally farmland protection and agricultural infrastructure, of course, because it's in our mission to support agriculture, we watch that very closely and support bills that provide funding and legislative improvements to that. And then we also are watching any implementation of climate resilience goals. So those could be 30 by 30, which, the state has enacted and, proposes 30% of our lands and waters protected by 2030. That's very important to us because Coyote Valley especially is so important for biodiversity and other climate resilience factors for the community. 30 by 30, and then also the climate smart land strategy at the state of California are goals that we invoke whenever we're seeking funding or support from a policy level. Those are two examples that we use quite often. And then also wanted to mention these 5 categories of priorities that are also in your board report, just in case there were questions on that as well. So that's what we've got going at the state level. And if my animation is functioning correctly, that's it. So then we're happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Question? Public comment? One public?
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Aaron. Space Authority, Nick, role, regional conservation.
Good evening. I'm Aaron Abear. I'm the Natural Resources Manager here at the Open Space Authority. I think I've met most of you, but perhaps not all of you. So hello, it's nice to be here tonight. I'm not really wearing my natural resources hat, but rather my manager hat. And we'll be talking a little bit about some of the sort of internal work the Open Space Authority staff have been doing as we've been kind of doing our planning for what we're doing in the next 3 to 5 years. So the purpose today is really to provide input and feedback to staff about this niche, and we'll sort of show you what that looks like. And then on Thursday, I'm going to be giving a substantially similar presentation to our board of directors to get their input as well. So I'm going to kind of take notes tonight based on your input. We probably won't do a ton of wordsmithing if possible, but I want to take your feedback and then share it with them, and we can collectively adjust from there. So just sort of what the heck am I even talking about? This is an exercise that a lot of the staff and our leadership team played to really define what our unique role is in this region, in this conservation area, particularly in Santa Clara Valley. And the reason we're interested in doing this kind of reflective type work is really to think about how we're going to prioritize our work in the year ahead. That we take on a lot of different things. Our work plan is pretty expansive, and there's a lot more this agency could do, but that's a separate thing from what this agency should do. And so I think kind of aligning along what makes us special and what's our role in this area, right? There's a lot of other agencies who do some things that are kind of like us, but not entirely like us. And then the other kind of purpose of this effort in some ways is to give us all the ability to talk about what makes the Open Space Authority so special. So this is kind of like something that you could have in your back pocket if you get stuck in an elevator with someone and you want to say, hey, what is the Open Space Authority? Hopefully we can all kind of remember these concepts. So it's not a lot of material to cover, but hopefully it's sort of useful in thinking about our work plan, which reminds me that once we've kind of gone through this effort of refining some of this language, it probably will appear in our work plan document. So again, just as a way of sort of explaining who we are, right? So that's kind of the context of this effort. And just to say, we're not here to revisit the mission of this agency. We have this wonderful mission that I'm displaying here, and I'll let folks sort of silently read it here, but it talks a lot about both our work to conserve the natural environment, agriculture, and connecting people to nature. And then we have this vision as well to create, open spaces for all and work towards sort of climate resiliency. So again, we're not sort of revisiting the fundamental work we do here, but sort of thinking about how we talk about it and how we focus. So I thought before actually, showing you a wall of text and talking about what's good and what's not good, I thought we could all do a little exercise just to kind of focus our brains a little bit and maybe just take 30 seconds and write down 3 things, if you've got pen and paper, about you, what you think makes the Open Space Authority special. That's it. Just what is special about this organization. And that could be your personal view, like Justin could say it's agriculture and ranching, or you could say, I know what all of this does, and it's Mark's work in legislation that's so important, or whatever you think is special. So just write down 3 things. You don't have to rank them. Just kind of sit on them and what is special about the Open Space Authority? I know I thought a lot about that when I took this job maybe a year and change ago, right? So 3 things, what makes the Open Space Authority special? Staff can play along too. We're not going to share all of them, but I think it'll help each of us, sort of refine our input. And I'll let you know that there's more than 3 things. So, it's no wrong or right. Okay, well, I'll let you noodle on that if you've written them down. Any questions on that?
Well, did you want to share them? Just
Through the chair.
I don't know how how do you want to proceed here? This is kind of your game here.
Well, if you want to do it, how about we do it rapid fire, no discussion, because we got, you know, a good number of people, but I would love to hear from all of you. So if you're ready to share, you feel comfortable to share, just list them out and we can go around the table.
Go around.
If I could
Go
start,
ahead.
Justin, connectivity, wildlife corridors, and agriculture, ranching, farming,
Mm-hmm.
so urban-rural interface, wildlife connectivity, and then working lands.
Great.
Sure. Focused, partnerships, and public support.
Great.
Yeah, access to nature, free and sustainably planned and implemented.
Mm-hmm.
I only wrote down my top one, which was conservation as, and I mean that as above conservation above recreation.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily protection of Coyote Valley, which I've seen almost destroyed so many times in the past 40 years.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that input. I think it's good to know what the committee is thinking. And one of the things I was just reflecting on, you know, coming to this meeting was that, you know, for those of us who work here, these are, you know, a huge chunk of our lives, right? And many of us have been here quite a long time. And, you know, I think we sort of take it for granted what makes us special. And I think for our board members, they've also been around for a few years as well. So, you know, we know ourselves a little too well, but I think what's nice about the Citizens Advisory Committee is that like sort of bridge role between the public who maybe knows a little less about us and someone like me who just lives and breathes this kind of stuff. So your input is very much appreciated. So I'll read these to you and we'll come back to them. So don't feel like you have to write them down. But this is the language that staff developed in thinking about our niche, who we are and what makes us special. Connecting people to the valley's natural and agricultural lands in unique, meaningful, and innovative ways. Wildlife connectivity in critical last chance landscapes like Coyote Valley and the Upper Pajaro watershed. Land protection and stewardship for nature and climate with light on the land ways for people to connect with Santa Clara Valley. Promoting equitable access to nature and empowering community-based programs with urban grants to meet people where they are. A nimble and creative government agency that fosters partnerships for conservation outcomes. Permanent protection of and support for vital agricultural lands. Innovative local environmental policy. And implementing a comprehensive approach to nature-based solutions for climate change. Some of you with good vision might be able to see that some of the text is in bold, and those are some of sort of the big themes of this. And again, the purpose of this effort is actually in some ways to have a slide just like this that allows us to talk about who we are. So this is kind of the final form of the product. So you know, we'll come back to the specific words and whether some of the things y'all mentioned are covered in this. Another way of representing this work is through those themes and sort of through this graphic. So this is like a little bit more high level, something you could see on our website or in a slide deck just like this. And in no particular order, agriculture, connecting people to Santa Clara Valley, wildlife connectivity, environmental policy, equitable access, conservation partnerships, land protection and stewardship, and nature-based solutions for climate change. So, you know, these eight sort of big themes of our work. This is the elevator pitch I was talking about, you know, like if my, you know, cousin asks me, you know, what my organization does, right? I should be able to sort of list these off. I might not remember them all, right? Just like all of us are kind of like, well, I think it's connectivity or I think it's conservation, for instance. But these are kind of the themes of this. And like I said, you know, the outputs of this effort is kind of that you could see it in presentations to external stakeholders or groups like yourself, You could see it in our work plan. It's a way of us talking about ourselves, and it's a way of sort of thinking about what we really do and what we should be doing. I guess said another way, if there's something that comes before us, like a cool opportunity out there in the world, but it doesn't fit within here, maybe it's not OSA's role to do it, right? Maybe there's other agencies or other partners that might be better suited for that activity. So that's kind of the scope of this. And so, yeah.
I just have one comment. Can you go back to?
Yeah.
Slide? Equitable access. The color to me is off. It should, if you're looking at everything else,
Mhm.
would it make more sense to change it to the blue that's also in the logo? Because it just caught my eye because it was gray.
We can upgrade it to blue.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It caught my eye. Well, I don't know if it was a good catch.
Yeah, duly noted.
I just didn't understand. It's like I could see the logo colors and everything else, and I was, why gray?
Ah. Next level.
So yeah, the goal today is really to just provide input on this list. And this is, I've kind of numbered them in this version just so we could refer to them. They're in no particular order. But again, connecting people to the valley, wildlife connectivity, land protection and stewardship, equitable access, conservation partnerships, protecting agricultural lands, local environmental policy, and nature-based solutions for climate change. Those are kind of the big themes. So with that, I'll refer to the advisory committee to provide any feedback on these. And if there are things that are not covered, I think in particular, that's really relevant feedback for our board.
Any input, any comment?
I'll jump in. I'm not shy. Well, this is great. I think especially as a new board member of the advisory committee, this would be really helpful for me when I'm trying to explain to friends and family. What is this other commitment I have now? And why is it really important to me? So I think this is great. One of the things that I wrote down was education, because I think educating current, and as somebody who spends her time in pediatrics, educating future generations of Californians about the importance of all of these things is an important kind of through line of all of the work that's done at the Open Space Authority. And so how do you see, so I noticed that education is missing or is not on here. How do you see that? And I think it's really important, and it's something that you guys do really, really well, and you do it in all of these domains. So how do you see that as being represented, if at all, in this niche infographic?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and maybe I would suggest as a format, we kind of collect all of your opinions today, get your input. Like that seems like something that's missing, and probably I'm seeing some nodding heads. So what we'll do is collect your feedback today, and then I'll work to edit it and kind of wordsmith it to incorporate education into this. So I will say, generally, I think connecting people to the valley's natural and agricultural lands, sort of how we sort of nestled those kinds of programs that we have, like the outreach programs, volunteer programs, et cetera. But, there's something to be said for emphasizing the word education in there too.
I just add to that, Allison. Thank you for that observation. I think in a lot of ways it's implicit, but maybe it needs to be explicit. And so many of our staff and our programs are focused on education. Actually, when you look through a lot of these, even when it comes to informing innovative local environmental policy, that's about educating local decision makers about why nature and conservation is so important to quality of life and the economy and so on. But I'd love to see that made more explicit in here, so thanks for that.
I agree. That's a very good point. Do we have any other comments? Yes.
Is there an actual just chunk and elevators like pitch without the numbers? Like what would it look like in just your 30-second, your 60-second breakdown of incorporating all of these things into a well-versed, how do we say all of this in
30 seconds, I suppose.
It's the 8 circles.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna, am I carrying the 8 circles with me is my point. Like that, so that would be my thing is, how do we say these things very quickly and then point them in the direction of the site, obviously would be the goal.
Yeah, that's a great question and great suggestion, I think. And one of the things that came up among our staff when we were sort of vetting this kind of same presentation was like, how do we have materials or, part of presentations or ways of talking about ourselves that connect with the public, especially in kind of a, elevator pitch kind of way. So Mark and I have sort of talked about, okay, once we kind of get this, get the major themes on there, add whatever is missing. How do we update our presentations and give yourselves and our board these kind of, what does it look like? Does it fit on a note card? What's the best way to do that? One of the things that our board gave direction to staff at their last retreat, which I think was in July, sometime thereabouts, was, hey, we really want to know how to be able to talk about the Open Space Authority to our constituents, right? And I totally understand what people are saying about how do I explain this to people in my life who know that I'm doing this now, right? So I think that's a great suggestion and something we can develop once we get this language approved.
And if I can add to that too, through the chair. So yeah, I really appreciate your comment, Lonnie. And as Aaron mentioned, we've been talking about how to put the talking points together. But I want to mention too that these, once they're all refined and approved, will inform all sorts of the content that we use every day. The website that's going to be revamped here in the next year, and our collateral, the brochures and newsletters, blog posts, all of that. So it'll come in chunks that way in different forms, but yeah, having something that you can have with you might be helpful too. Anybody else?
Sounds like it's resonating, which is good. That's a nice sign that, those of us who work here, are doing an okay job or good job of communicating what we do, and there's some alignment. So, appreciate the feedback. We'll think on the education, how that gets incorporated, as well as, what the next kind of deliverables or things we can submit to you and the board to, know how to best talk about our work. So thanks for your input.
Anybody else has any further comments after tonight? Just direct them to Aaron.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Public comment? No? All right. Caroline. Meeting start time.
Yeah, so this item came as a suggestion from our November meeting, about, the start time of the CAC being 7 o'clock, and I did a little bit of research, and in the Citizens Advisory Committee Handbook of Guidelines and Responsibilities, it says that it doesn't actually specify the meeting time in the guidelines. So I consulted with our legal counsel, and we agreed that it is at the discretion of the committee to set your meeting time. So with that,
Would we need a motion to do that?
yes, so if I guess depending on if you want to discuss changing,
Change it.
yes, so yeah, somebody would need to make a motion.
Discussion. I mean, last time we talked about it, a few people mentioned possibly moving it up to 6 o'clock. Anybody have any thoughts?
I just wanted some background because I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I was kind of surprised.
Oh, okay. Well, at the last meeting, we briefly discussed possibly moving the time up a little bit, so we didn't end up leaving here at times at 9 o'clock at night. And there were several people that showed interest, but we need to move it, discuss it more. And that's what we're doing right now. So if you have any thoughts or.
I do.
Okay.
Coming from downtown and going south on 87 at 6 o'clock is a nightmare. But to get here at 7 o'clock, it's a lot easier. It makes a big difference.
I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day, so having these meetings go until 9 is rough. With that said, as a working stiff, getting here at 6 would be a real hardship. We're pretty far south. Those of us that commute, most of us would have to commute all the way through downtown and all that other stuff. Getting here at 6 would be just about impossible for most folks that get off at 5, and who gets off at 5 these days, right? So, when I'm working at home and if things aren't too crazy at work, I would love a 6 o'clock start time. The thing is it's not just thinking about me personally. It's very important to me that this committee be accessible to not just folks that are retired or independently wealthy, but folks that are grinding, the 9 to 5 working folks, because I think their representation in this committee is super duper important. So with all that said, whereas I may many times, even most of the time, benefit from a 6 o'clock start, I think it's too early. I think 6:30 is a little bit more realistic, but I really think for most people that get off at 5 and work in downtown San Jose or further north, I don't know that it's workable. And again, I think it would influence long-term who's able to join this committee. It would make it less accessible, and less accessible is not what we're about.
I agree with the kind gentleman right over there. Is there a possibility that one could, we can change the rule? I agree 6 o'clock is impossible because I come from the other world and it takes me almost an hour to get here with traffic and rain and everything else. Could we try 6:30 one time at least or 2, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, we go back to 7. Just a suggestion.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to move the start time 30 minutes earlier to 6:30. See if it dies or what the vote will be.
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Any further discussion?
Can I just point a clarification? Is that permanently or to try one time to see how it goes? Which one are we voting?
Yes, was that motion to do it just once or twice or to permanently change it to 6:30?
I'll amend that to add to reevaluate it at the next meeting.
And second agrees with that.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
So the motion is to move the start time of the CHC to 6:30 for the March meeting?
Yes.
Okay. And I had a question. I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about how this came up. At the last meeting, what were the reasons for considering moving the start time?
Yeah, there's a memo on this.
Oh, well, I missed it.
Okay.
Okay.
Would somebody like to refresh our memory as to why it was moved or suggested that we move?
You're gonna pay your rate now. Well, you know, I like to talk and I'll recount history. Basically, it's just.
I'll go over, sure. No, the last meeting was when they presented the meeting dates, and I brought up the possibility. At that time, we thought that the bylaws needed to be changed by the board, so I proposed that we do an email poll to see what everybody might prefer, and then ask the board if they would be willing to change the bylaw. We've since found out that there is no bylaw, and Carolyn just explained that a bit ago.
But this all came up, why? Because you wanted the meetings over earlier, right?
And several people and staff that I have previously talked to over the prior year plus, I had indicated they might be interested, so I was curious to see what the total interest might be.
Thank you.
I'm sure, does this make a difference to staff? As far as timing?
6:30?
No?
See, I would, sorry. I would imagine it would if you're still here, because you have to wait till 7, at least at 6:30, not that far off.
Yeah, I think this is more of a CAC member decision.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. A roll call vote. If there's no further discussion. Okay. Wait, turn on your mics, please.
Aaron Gill,
Sure, let's give it a shot.
Robert Sippel,
Aye.
Allison Follow. Aye. Lauren Lewis,
Aye.
Raj Manat,
Aye.
Justin Fields,
Aye.
Dan Kenny,
No.
Kathy Sutherland. Aye. Steve Mink,
Abstain.
Lonnie Wong Bissett,
I'm saying aye, but I guarantee I'll be the one who's late. It'll be me.
Edward Von Rennen.
Aye.
Motion carried. Our March meeting will start at 6:30. Been there the whole time. Okay, report, board liaison. Barnetta. you have
Yes,
something for us?
of course, I put my notes away. We had the election of our officers at our last meeting. And Helen Chapman will continue as our chair. And Vicki Alexander will be our vice chair. We had a really wonderful presentation regarding the restoration project that's being done on the Pajaro lands that we own, and hoping that you folks will have an opportunity to have that presentation also. And that's primarily the most important things.
Will we get that presentation? I'm fine.
Chair, vice chair.
Through the chair. We are planning on doing, and Michelle can, maybe she took off, she can help me with the terminology, but we're gonna be doing like a webcast presentation for sort of the general public to enjoy. So we will definitely let the CAC know when that's happening, and you can tune in when that's happening. And then I'm certainly happy to talk about it if there's greater interest in some of our restoration work down there.
General Manager, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lauren, very much for your service. I'm going to start with Lee Rasher.
Thank you, Andrea. For those of you who may not have heard, or maybe for those who have heard, Matt Freeman, my fellow AGM, will be retiring at the end of May. Okay, for those of you who have not heard, apparently, Mr. Freeman will be retiring at the end of May. And one of the general manager's priorities over the last 2 years has been to develop and empower staff in an effort not just to enrich their experience here at the authority, but also to benefit the agency and to focus on succession planning. So when days like this come, we are ready. And we're very excited to spread Matt's various responsibilities across several staff members, and we'll be going to the board this Thursday to request some changes to our salary and pay position pay plan to accommodate the changes that we're proposing. And then implement those changes should they be approved on January 29th. So I want to leave you in suspense so that you'll come back in March and we can announce what those changes are. But the board packet is available, and of course, you're always welcome to tune in or attend the board meetings as well. And then I have two other items I wanted to put on your calendars. One, staff is currently working on our budget and work plan. The budget goes to the ABC Administration and Budget Committee in May, on May the 9th, and then to the full board on June 13th. And again, you're always welcome to attend those meetings as members of the public, as opposed as committee members, or to listen in online. And this also means that we'll be drafting a proposed CAC work plan to come back to you in March that aligns with the proposed agency work plan. So we'll work with you to develop a work plan for fiscal year 24-25, which seems so far away, but here we are. And then the last is we're aiming to schedule a joint board CAC meeting in the beginning of April. We're looking right now at maybe April 11th, but that's TBD. If you want to pencil us in on your calendar, we will confirm that or let you know which date that shakes out at. And those are my updates. Did you want to add something?
Thanks, Lee. Mark, you had one item, right?
Yeah, good evening. Just wanted to mention that the annual State of the Valley Conference is coming up. That's a conference put on by joint venture Silicon Valley. It's usually about economic factors in Silicon Valley, but this year it's also about future trends in emerging social, environmental, demographic, political areas. And so we're going to purchase some tickets. It's a hybrid event, so for in-person attendance, you have to buy a ticket, and we'll make 2 of those seats available to CAC members. We'll also have 2 for board members and probably 1 staff. And so we'll be looking for an email that will mention that. And if you're interested, please let us know.
Lee, if you don't mind, I'm going to use the general manager's prerogative to just let the CAC know that, over the last going on 2 years now, we've been talking a lot about succession here. We have an aging management team, not me, but but we have a lot of talent at this agency, and it's really important to make sure that we remain a strong agency for the future. So we started working on succession planning in earnest, in the last year or so. And I think just Matt's coming departure at the end of May just accelerated that transition. So what we're taking to the board on Thursday night, I just couldn't be more pleased. I've asked Mark Landgraf to step into the assistant general manager role that Matt will be vacating. I've asked Megan Drager to become the manager of our conservation programs and strategic partnerships. I've asked Elizabeth Loretto to be our administration manager. And I've asked Nick Perry, our Coyote Valley project director, to become the long-range planning manager for the Open Space Authority. So we'll have kind of current planning, design, and construction of our open space preserves, which is headed up by Lucas Shellhammer. But we'll have two swim lanes of planning. One is like the day-to-day current planning, opening lands to the public, and the other is more about planning for the long range, which includes Coyote Valley. And there's some other moves in there, but I couldn't be more excited. We're going to have a really strong, even stronger management team, and the next generation is stepping up. And I'm really excited about this. So it'll be up to the board on Thursday night, but assuming they give that the green light, then those new positions will be approved next week, and we will be off to the races. So you're going to be seeing more of some of these folks in the coming months. A couple other things I wanted to share with you that have happened or are happening right now, and then I'll talk about some more things in 2024. Also on Thursday night at the board, I think it's taken like 9 or 10 years, but the 5 Wounds Trail is finally happening. So we've been waiting for a long time for the Valley Transportation Authority and the City of San Jose to kind of work through some things. And the County Parks Department and OSA have been kind of waiting in the wings. How can we help? So on Thursday night, the board will have before them an approval of 500,000 of OSA's contribution toward implementing a new two plus mile segment of the Five Wounds Trail along the western railroad right of way. And this is from William Street to Lower Silver Creek Trail. So the city, the county, and OSA will each contribute 500,000, so $1.5 million to get started with the planning and implementation. This is going to be like a $14 million project when it's all said and done. But opening up this Five Wounds Trail, connecting it to BART, providing for a lot of folks and neighborhoods on that east side access to new ways of commuting and exercising. And the beauty of it is the VTA has agreed to donate the right-of-way at no cost to the city. So the cost that's going to go into this is for planning and construction and building this thing that will probably take the better part of a decade to do. But we're all going to chip in to get this started and to be seeking grant funds to implement it. So anyway, keep your eyes peeled. Hopefully there'll be some more press on that. Speaking of press, if you were paying attention today, a big deal happened up on northern Coyote Ridge. The almost 4,000 acres of the Richmond Ranch was purchased by County Parks, the Valley Habitat Agency, with leadership by a national conservation organization called the Conservation Fund. They went in there and took advantage of the fact that you had a distressed sale of a Chinese developer. It didn't work out over 5 years ago for us all to chip in and buy this. And it was almost bought by some affordable housing developers. That fell through. And so today they purchased this property. It's going to be opened up for public access. There'll also be a lot of biodiversity protected and set aside there. But think about it. 3,694 acres of Richmond Ranch on northern Coyote Ridge. Right across Metcalf will be Coyote Ridge that the Open Space Authority owns and manages. And coming soon, probably in the next year, what we call East Coyote Ridge will be coming to us from the Valley Habitat Agency. So totaling Coyote Ridge for us will be about going on 5,000 acres plus 3,600. You were starting to approach 10,000 acres of protected open space on Coyote Ridge for the benefit of nature and the public. So it's really, really exciting. And then the other thing happening in that, I just learned this today, and I'm hoping our illustrious chair will share a little bit about this, but OSA, the Valley Habitat Agency, and a really amazing rancher named Justin Fields are partnering to get funds from the Natural Resource Conservation Service to do joint habitat and grazing infrastructure up on Coyote Ridge, Mayana Yakima. So I don't know, Justin, if there's anything you want to add to that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've been talking with NRCS, with OSA, and with the Habitat Agency, and yeah, we've applied for funding through NRCS for well development, stockwater infrastructure, some cross fencing, so we can better manage things up on Coyote Ridge and Coyote Ridge East. The eastern portion is my main concern, is because it lacks water. It doesn't have a lot of water developed on the eastern side of the ridge. Coyote Ridge, the west side has quite a few springs, but the east side does not. And so this will enable us to get water to a lot more areas over on the east side.
Is water available up there?
Well, the well is going to be on the west side.
Okay.
At the very top, and then it will be piped over the ridge. Yeah. Yet to drill them yet, so they got to get water first.
Do they know what the depth is?
Yeah, they have an idea. Yeah, I don't have the information in front of me, but yeah, they've done a lot of research on it. they're fairly confident. They will. I think there's 3 different wells proposed. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
And it takes a private landowner or a rancher to actually apply
It's the EQIP program. So yeah.
to the fund. Yeah.
So OSA can't apply themselves, the tenant has to. And you have to have a 5-year lease or better to apply. And all of OSA's leases just got renewed this year, so.
Yeah. So great partnership, great things happening up in the Diablo Range on Coyote Ridge. Very exciting. Just a couple other things. You're going to be hearing more about this, but probably at the beginning of the summer, we're going to be dedicating the new Yagas Creek Bridge and day use area at Rancho Cañada del Oro. The bridge is almost done. So are the trails in the day use area on the, what is that, southeast side of Yagas Creek. And if you didn't know this, I didn't really know this myself until not that long ago. For the public right now to go out to Rancho Cañada del Oro, they're using about 40% of the acreage of that property. By opening up this new area on the other side of the creek, it opens up a whole nother area. 60% of Rancho Cañada del Oro will now be accessible to the public, an additional 60% beyond the 40%. And there's a big commitment to ADA accessibility. This will be 100% accessible for people with mobility challenges and wheelchairs. They'll be able to go right across this new bridge that's gone in and enjoy the trails and get beautiful views and interact in an educational program, way with this beautiful open space preserve. So we're really excited about it. So that'll be coming, and we'd love to have you at the dedication when the time comes. The other thing I'm learned about just in the last couple of weeks, also after many years of negotiating with the West Hills Church and the city of Morgan Hill, it's looking like we are going to have an agreement in 2024 that will allow OSA to get legal access or maintain our legal access to get to our El Toro property off DeWitt Avenue and Hale Avenue up past the West Hills Church and onto our property. And West Hills Church is indicating they are ready to sign an agreement for trail access up onto El Toro. So we'll have an MOU with the city of Morgan Hill for joint management. We'll split the responsibilities. We'll manage the land, we'll manage the trail. They'll do police patrols, trash pickup, those kind of things. We're going to work out all the bugs and who does what. But this will be huge. I mean, to be able to say to Morgan Hill, we're finally ready to plant the flag and say we have an open space preserve on El Toro. All right.
Does that go all the way to the top?
Almost to the top.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is all of this is great news, every one of these. I find that whether you want to call them press releases or information reports that come out to the CAC and board members to be invaluable. It's interesting. I have written down in ink older than your statement about Richmond is be sure and ask Mark about the Richmond Ranch, because I heard bits and pieces about it in the news in this last week. And so I'd love to get a statement from the OSA of even if it's if we weren't directly involved, then a congratulations for this excitement step forward for the Diablo Range and what this purchase of the Richmond Ranch means, because more people I've talked to want to know what the OSA is doing. That's valuable for me to have.
Steve, I'll just say that, as you know, it takes a village to conserve and steward all these lands. And on any given day, we'll split up the responsibilities of who's doing what. This particular transaction wouldn't have come together without the Conservation Fund. They are a national conservation real estate organization. They're tremendously talented. They can move very quickly, and they did. And so the money is coming from Valley Habitat Agency. I believe there might be a little bit of money from Valley Water, County Parks, and then the rest they're going to apply for state grants. who's gonna manage all the land and where trails go and all that hasn't all been figured out. We've already indicated we're more than happy to be a key player in that. But just to think about how all these pieces fit together, we're gonna need to do a lot of planning together. So.
You'll have it today, so I'm gonna cut you some slack today.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so just this afternoon, we sent a congratulations email to our partners. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any new members? Anything to report?
I was raising an idea that, on the work plan for the coming year of 25 is to bring some sort of, agricultural, educational program to the CAC. And I'd like to see more information being shared between production agriculture as well as open space authorities. So I know we started off last year with a program that OSA put on talking about agriculture. I'm just trying to go ahead and continue that conversation because it's important to understand how things blend together and how there might be some areas of some obstacles or challenges within that format too. So I just want to bring that to the attention and see if that can get added to our work plan. Go ahead and bring some programs in agriculture.
Good idea.
Through the chair, may I suggest,
Yeah.
you know, one, I'll put a couple things on your radar and then touch on things we could bring to the CAC. In short order, and forgive me if I don't know the exact time, the first draft of some of the existing conditions report from the Coyote Valley Conservation Areas Master Plan is going to come out. And the relevant portion is for you is the agricultural part. I know you participated in our sort of roundtable, so a lot of the write-ups and the summary of sort of some of our early thinking about agriculture in Coyote Valley is going to come out from that. So we'll be sure you get a copy of that. The other bit of exciting news I'll share is we are shortly going to be posting a position for an agricultural specialist who will report to yours truly. And their work plan in the first year is to really kind of stand up, you know, some of our agricultural ambitions. So I don't want to promise their time before they're alive in here, but you know, eventually they'll be coming to you and to our board to sort of say, how do we really align on our agricultural mission? And so interests like you were describing of, you know, what's our role and what's going on in the agricultural region. That's all great input for that person and will help them think about what their marching orders.
Okay.
Aaron, if I could, we might think about too, inviting some folks to come to the CAC to speak. Like we're meeting with Michael Meehan at the county, might even be tomorrow, to talk about putting more juice behind the stewardship incentive payments to farmers and ranchers to make that available to them going forward. And we're talking about renewing the there's an agricultural fund that was created when you were serving on the Santa Clara Valley Agricultural Plan Task Force. So some of the agricultural focused acquisitions we're doing have some money coming from the county, and we're going to renew that because we're coming up on the time limit for it. So those kind of things are coming along. We're happy to report out or have some folks come and talk to you about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mark, I wanted to thank you for the information you sent out about Heritage Oaks. The potential, for those of you that, it's the proposal to develop a memorial park.
So the Heritage Oaks project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, just for everybody's background information, there's a project proposal put in to the city of San Jose for a cemetery on top of a hill near our Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. And it was actually submitted originally about 10 years ago, had an EIR, an environmental impact report done. And now the city is considering moving that project forward. There are changes to the project, so the city is considering whether to, I don't know if that's all the information you wanted, I'm just kind of trying to give everybody the background. The city is evaluating whether to just amend the existing environmental impact report or whether to create a new supplemental report. We've been advocating for a supplemental EIR because not only has the project changed in significant ways, but there's also so much more information now than there was 10 years ago about wildlife connectivity in the area and other important natural resources that need to be considered.
And so I've asked the District 6 leadership group to invite you or invite the Open Space Authority to go speak to them about this project. I think this is an important project for us all to start spreading out to our networks because it feels like encouraging.
Yeah, this is, I don't know, the property is I think going on about 200 acres, isn't it, Mark? Something like that, of that size?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a cemetery that will have traditional burial sites, but it will also have 8 mausoleums and a crematorium, buildings, roadways, all kinds of things. And it was proposed, yeah, a good 10 years ago, not long after or maybe just before I arrived here. But it was an attempt by the landowners to fill what they saw was a need for burial that would meet the needs of all kinds of faiths and nationalities, because San Jose is such a diverse population. And as they have said, there haven't been any new cemeteries built in the county in a long, long time. I think the question is this the right place for that kind of a very developed facility? When we know so much more now about, the wildlife movement patterns go right through this. This is a deep canyon. The hillside's coming down to the valley floor, right at the gate to the northern gate to Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve, and right where Valley Water's pipeline goes along the valley floor. And it's also on top of that where the county parks is regional trail connection is supposed to go, which they already have the okay from Valley Water to have a trail easement on top of the pipeline right of way. So yeah, it's going to be challenging, and so there's a lot of education to be done with the City Council of San Jose, which has new members that weren't there even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to just educate them about. We've invested about $150 million in Coyote Valley between the state, feds, private, OSA, nonprofits. And that investment continues to draw other investments. So Mark mentioned earlier, if the climate bond gets approved on the November ballot, could be up to $30 million there to invest in Coyote Valley. So this is the new investment that is being advanced for nature and people and climate right there. And, San Jose has already said that we need these natural working lands as a part of its climate solution. It says that in their climate action plan. So these are some of the challenges that an agency like ours both faces, and I think is uniquely kind of tailored to address, because this will be a hard decision for the city. They're trying to, address needs, but they're also trying to address climate and acknowledge that they've made, $50 million of investment in Coyote Valley. Well, and this would overlay the drinking water supply for a lot of people.
And that's been my lens, right? Is that the city of San Jose passed measure, I think it was F. Was it a T? Was it T? I'm sorry, my letters. Where the city created funding for Coyote Valley. And I believe it was $50 million. The city residents voted to support protecting Coyote Valley by taxing themselves. And now it is now kind of in jeopardy. And so I think getting the word out to San Jose residents that you agreed to tax yourself to protect Coyote Valley when you supported Measure T, are you gonna pull it back if this development goes through?
Anyway, we'll keep you posted, on this as we go forward.
If I could, so this actually ties back to earlier, we talked about the vision, the mission, and the 8 goals of the OSA. Which I don't find them dry, but could be seen as dry type words. The statement you sent to us about heritage hit on every one of those, our vision, our mission, those 8 elements. And I thought it was a very thoughtful piece of work, something, when I share that with people, or when I share the thoughts that were in that with people, I'm putting a story together that maps back to the OSA. It's something people can connect to, when they may not connect to 8 circles on a picture. So that's why I said earlier, I really appreciate getting information like that. And while I'm here, and we were talking about the Richmond, I don't want to create work for you all. But if your letters of thanks to these other organizations are in the public domain, or you might consider them, I think forwarding them on to the CAC and the board to say, just thought you'd want to know, this is what we're about, this great news, and that our partners were able to accomplish together. Without stepping on anybody's toes. I don't want to say how to implement it, but there's ways to not cause you a lot of work and get us a lot of information. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Steve.
Anybody else? Aaron, when the ag position comes up, let me know, I might know somebody. And I want to thank you all for having the faith put me in this position here. Hopefully you don't regret it. Do we have any subcommittee reports?
Sure, and since we're super tight on time, I'll go very quickly. In regards to the outreach subcommittee meeting that we just had on the 9th of January. And just to reiterate, the purpose of the committee is to help guide the strategies and tactics to achieve the overarching and larger outreach goals for the OSA. So everyone kind of understands what our asks are going to be as well. We kind of went over the purpose of it, and really we were looking at having corporate outreach is, I think, the very first thing that they're looking to do. So they're looking at building talking points and FAQs. We batted around a lot of things and gave them a lot of things to talk about. If any of you have thoughts or ideas, send them our way and we will go ahead and funnel them down. But yeah, we put them through the ringer, lots and lots of things. But they are going to try and talk to a business group that will incorporate a number of large corporations and businesses and leaders from those corporations. And then after that, they will try and target specific groups, like we suggested, like Adobe and the Google and the Yahoo groups, and not just like the corporate leaders, but the actual HR groups or the ERGs and the employee resource groups and things like that, to try and just do outreach and education, which is a big word we were talking about. It would be about educating a group of individuals at these corporations and get their thoughts on what they believe the OSA is about and how can they partner and how their corporations can partner with the OSA in the future. I think the big thing they brought up was the resilient Silicon Valley 2050, like long goalpost kind of thing. And that would be a big discussion, other than, you know, some of the smaller goalposts, which is coming up for voting. Obviously we can't ask them to do certain things like, yes, please vote for, you know, these things, but would you think about supporting the OSA? I think are those kinds of thoughts. But they're going to showcase the 2050 kind of like, here's our long plan and why it's important to do these steps and why otherwise this is what's going to happen, and here's why it's important to you. But we're in those planning stages. They should provide more FAQs and more bullet points for us. The March timeframe, so we should have something by the next meeting, more concrete to share with all of you then, but that's where we're currently at right now.
Thank you, Lon.
Thanks.
There's nothing else? Sure.
Oh.
54.